Hello and welcome back to Season 6 of the MRX Lab podcast, the show from Flexamar where this year we're on a mission to share inspiring stories, tips and tricks to help you put customers at the heart of business decisions. To help me do that, I'm thrilled today to be joined by Rainey of Virgin Media O2. Welcome to the show, Claire. If you just want to start us off by telling us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Head of Insights for Virgin Media O2. I've been there 7 years and running everything from the brand tracking to customer prop testing to changes in the market. So it's quite a variety of remits. Prior to that, I worked at Royal Mail, started out my career there, and then worked at Sky. So I have a long history in large corporates.
Large corporates, brilliant. A bit of a first question, easy question. Tell us a customer insight that surprised you, either in what it was or the impact that it had.
So we have a segmentation, which I'm really proud of at Virgin Media O2. And we basically created the segmentation, and then we've done a series of other projects and research which build on it. We use it every single time. And a couple of years ago, we did a piece around channels and channel usage. And I was really surprised to find that our most sort of high-spending, tech-savvy customers who basically like everything, they want to get, the best phone, the best TV, the best gadgets, this and that. They really like to shop in store. Right. And I thought these people, they're busy people, often quite high flying in their careers and families, everything going on. I thought these are surely going to be online people. So I was really pleasantly surprised to find that actually they like to go into store to make purchases. And the reason for that is they know what they're doing and they know their stuff, but they kind of want to have that geeky moment with a store advisor, get that reciprocity, get that sort of, oh, well, I think it's got this feature, don't you? And that, as I say, that excitement that you get when you've chosen something and you know it's right, and that takeaway. So it was really wonderful to see. And as I say, gives us a different lens on how we might think about stores and the different usage actually that stores have for different types of customers.
Did it change a decision? Did it influence a decision in a different way that perhaps it wouldn't have done had it not been there?
Definitely. And because before we were really thinking about digital as a channel for this audience, and digital obviously has a much less cost to serve. Yes. But if there is that benefit, and there is also then that opens up to further opportunity, as you probably can imagine, especially in store with cross-sell or with sharing to other products, then it does change what you think. And particularly with your most highly valued tech audience, it was exciting and a good message, but a different message to perhaps what we were expecting across the business.
Yes, which is a great example of driving value, I guess, through the business. So we're talking about customers there and I guess customer-centric decisions. What does customer-centric or customer centricity mean to you? What do you think?
For me, it's about a culture, and I always sort of think of it as almost having the customer on your shoulder. So when we're making a decision, or more importantly, when our stakeholders are making a decision, they feel like they've got that little voice in their ear guiding them, which is the customer. So you've got the commercials and they're sort of the black and white in front of you, but does that sit right? Do I understand what the customer wants? And is that embedded throughout the organisation? And it's quite a difficult thing to get that customer centricity and to maintain it, because if you think about it, everybody's got so many priorities. We all have so many priorities. We've got so much to read, so much to stay on top of. So to keep that drumbeat and that consistent view through a big corporate is difficult. You've got to have it sort of there, tangible, accessible. And that's quite a tricky job. And that's what I see my role is. And that's why I feel like every insight we do shouldn't be like, this is something new, this is something new. It's almost too much. We need to build on things. Like people say, perhaps use a weather map. It's familiar, where your bearings are. We might use our segmentation. It's familiar, your bearings. You're building on the knowledge. You're creating that so that people can keep that easy to reach viewpoint of customer in their mind and feel like they're making the decision for the customer as well as for the business. So it's always a balance, isn't it? We've got to balance the commercials at the end of the day, but to feel like it's what the customer's going to want.
That's a really interesting point there about having the customer almost on your shoulder. How do you go about doing that when you yourself or your team can't be in every room where every decision is made?
Yeah, and of course you can't. And it's a balance. So we do a mixture of working with our planning and governance team to say when are the right forums coming up that we can provide updates for, and we lean on them to make sure that we can sort of access and get into those forums, whether they be monthly typically, and we'll feed in some stuff. We also create our own forums and outputs when we've got regular things, for example, quarterly trackers or updates, and we will do updates. And that's more of a broadcast, but we will also boil that down and synthesize and share that as and when. But of course, you inevitably have the reactive role that we all have to play. I mean, it's lovely to say, yes, I'm always going to be on the front foot, but in reality, that's not the case. Yeah. So in those times when people are coming to us, it is important to be able to sort of react, to put the right person forward, to give people the opportunity to speak, to reprioritize what we need to do so that we can be present in those moments, or to share. And that's also the strength in having a team. And I'm really fortunate that we've got a team of 11 of us. So if one person can't go, another person can. If it wasn't your project, you can get familiar with it enough that you can share. And we really do lean on each other as a collective team. You know, we've all got annual leave or days off or whatever, or literally can't be in two places at once. Doesn't mean it can't be there, can't be communicated in the right places at the right time.
Do you find yourself then thinking more about influence than perhaps we typically think of customer insight? We often think about the process of customer insight.
So I'm a big believer that it's got to be much more about the influence than the process. And I would say to my team, it's 50-50, because historically I think we'd be like 90% process, 10% influence. Yes. And for me, it's 50-50 should be the goal. And me as the lead of the team, probably 10-90, right? And the more we can think, where is this going? What is the influence? Who am I talking to? And how? Because it doesn't stop, does it, when we have the information? We really have to say it and say it again, and often say it again. And some things don't land with a first strike. Some things you've got to say again. Particularly, I was thinking an example of this is around trust. You know, it took me probably 2 years to really land and get some traction in the company that trust is a major issue in the category. Trust with telcos. You know, we've seen trust decline in a lot of large companies and government, and we're, you know, no different to that. But because you've got other people in the ear of senior leaders talking about the bottom line here, or product line A versus product line B, how do you get something so intangible as trust to be on their radar? Is difficult. You know, what's their action? What's their thing to do next? And it isn't a formula. You know, with something else, it could be a formula. That many handsets, that many boxes. That, you know, something more tangible. Trust is intangible. Yes. So I've kind of had to stick with it, come at it from lots of different angles, be patient, and continue to influence. So I think depending on the insight and the direction you've got, there are very different ways, very different timescales that influencing and impact can take.
It's really interesting because you can tell just by the way you're talking, you're spending more time thinking about that almost than the actual process that led to the trust insight in there. So thinking about strategic decisions, is there any examples of where customer insight has changed a strategic decision, either in your current role or past roles?
I mean, I think if our team isn't making an impact on the strategic decisions, then we're not doing our jobs right. And what I like to reflect on every quarter, every half year, at the end of the year, is what are the big initiatives that we're doing, that we're shaping, that are coming out of the business, the big product decisions, the big propositions that we're launching. And our fingerprints, if you like, should be all over those. And if they are not, then we're doing something wrong. So I would always like to think that we are, you know, making those things. There's one example last autumn I give, because I don't want to give too many trade secrets away of decisions and why we made them. But we had a really nice campaign that we planned to do around the National Data Bank leading up to Christmas, around giving data to those in data poverty. And those sort of campaigns are really difficult to land in the right way. You don't want to be, you know, patronising. You don't want to misinterpret or portray the situations. So we did some slightly different methodology. We did sort of pairs instead of groups. We went out to the respondents just to make sure that we captured that sensitivity, and that really shaped the campaign in a different way, in a positive way, and it landed really well. So it's always great when you can, as I say, see something so specific and a success in a campaign from something that you've done.
It is. It's brilliant example as well. You talked before about a team of 11 in there, and we talked about shifting that emphasis from process to influence, communicating it being 50-50, as you said. How do you go about that with your team in terms of how do you make them change their mindset from perhaps being a researcher to being an influencer?
I mean, that's a brilliant question, because it's not everyone's natural style. And we've actually just been doing some personality profiling, and I'm sure many people have done this. And I, for one, tend to fall on the opposite side of the circle to the rest of my team. And I think we all know that a lot of people in our industry will fall into that sort of analytical, that detailed space. And it's uncomfortable to be out there. So the answer is got to be just baby steps, step by step. What can you do? And showing actually that, and empowering people to remind them that they are the knowledge expert, that they can share, that they can do. What are they comfortable with? Supporting people, just working with individuals, really.
Yes.
You really have to work with different people at different levels and different timeframes to see, perhaps you start off when they're presenting within your team, then it's within a wider team, then it's, online on a Teams meeting, then it's maybe face-to-face. So it's building up and showing the merit that you get from it, and that's where the influence can really happen. And if people are really out of their comfort zone, then sometimes it's like, okay, well, maybe somebody else can present, because we also do need those skills. It's about a balance of skills.
Yes. It's interesting you talk about personality traits. We're talking about skills there, because it almost takes me into a different space, which is, do you think about recruitment differently than you perhaps would have done if we were just talking about the analytical side of research?
Definitely. I mean, I feel like recruitment sort of 10, 15 or so years ago would be testing people perhaps on some of their methodology and their, maybe questionnaire design and what experience have they got. And now it's much more testing people on their how, because you can teach them the what. So you can definitely, if you've got a gap here around, I don't know, questionnaire design, or you're not familiar with conjoints, but you are familiar with behavioural science, then there's different things we can do. Agencies can support, we can fill those gaps. What is harder to fill is that ability to be able to sort of put somebody in front of a senior audience, that they are going to be believable, that they can be succinct, that they're not going to sort of hide behind the methodologies, because that's the other thing that we do, and we stop doing. You don't need to do it. You don't need to prove that you've done something. People don't want to hear that. People don't have time for that. We have got to go in there knowing that we're trusted partners, and instead be thinking about, what does the stakeholder need? Where's their head coming from? A bit like I was talking about with a customer. We want the stakeholders to think about customer. We need to be spending as much time thinking about stakeholder. What do they need to get to the next level, to get to the decision, to be able to move forward, to be able to believe it, to be able to sell it into their bosses, peers, other departments, third parties. So it is a different skill set.
It is. Is there a message in there in terms of people joining the industry?
I think the message for me is, and last year I did a careers fair, and which was really, really interesting, by the way. I had secondary school children of all ages, and the different questions you get through years 7 to 11 was hilarious. But what sort of struck me when I was thinking about it, how can I make this relevant and make it explainable to somebody? And I said, if you're interested in psychology and you're interested in maths and potentially obviously business as you get into A-levels and things, those are the subjects which I think you can really harness in our industry. Those are sort of the core things. And I've not done or studied psychology, but it is one of the most interesting aspects, I think, of our job. So
and again, you talked about personality tests and traits there. Is there when you're interviewing, is there a personality trait is there a kind of underlying thing that you look for in a person that you think might help in that influencing role?
Probably just depends on the level and the individual role in terms of what we need and who is suitable, because so many different personalities can work well, and it depends if that person is going to be primarily facing into perhaps a financial team versus what I might call an operations team, channels and stores and those type of people. So it's just working out what type of influence, and that can be sort of subtle, but somebody who's just prepared to give it a go. I think resilience is a hugely important characteristic. Perseverance, able to work together. I mentioned we get a lot from our wider team in terms of supporting each other, but also pulling it together as a jigsaw with other pieces of insight. So those are sort of the core things, really, collaboration, perseverance, open-minded.
Yes.
And communication.
Communication is obviously key in influence. Do you think, I mean, again, looking broader at your career and our time in the industry, do you think that focus has changed in your time?
Not necessarily, because my first job in Insight was at Royal Mail, and we discussed my boss at the time, and I think I was recruited in there. I was on the graduate scheme and I hadn't done research in Insight. I was doing pricing policy and fairly dry topics. And I sort of did a sideways move into market and competitive intelligence, got a bit closer, and then went for this job. And I wasn't skilled, wasn't trained, and then I proceeded in my 20s to do loads of the MRS courses and things. But I know that I was recruited because of my attitude and my communication, and that those skills would follow with a few good courses from the MRS.
Yes.
So I think that some people were doing that back in the noughties.
Yeah.
So it's probably more important.
Yeah.
But I certainly think there was an awareness then.
And again, thinking about communication, how much time as a team, do you spend time thinking about how to communicate the message of an insight? Maybe more, again, we traditionally still think about PowerPoints and debriefs. To what extent do you challenge that or try to move that on? Yeah,
I think that depends on there's always a dependency, isn't there, on your speed and the size of the project. So if you've got something big, like we're refreshing the segmentation now, that's up front and centre. Okay, what can we do? And I love when you go into conferences and things and hearing how other people have landed their segmentations and ideas and getting ideas. And it's much more important to invest time, money, potentially collateral and different types of medium to get that across. If it's something quick, though, we've got an investment decision on networks, for example, it's something we've had in the last couple of years, then not so much. That's got to be, okay, they just need something punchy. I mean, we're thinking about it, but we're perhaps not spending as much time to polish it because they just really need something short and brief. So it's really, you've got to understand your audience, and do they want something more thorough, or would they rather have it 2 weeks earlier and 80% than, get to 95%? And I don't think we need to ever get to 100%, by the way, because if you did that, you
never finish.
No, exactly. You'd be analysis paralysis.
And again, in there, talked about stakeholders and different people. Do you find you have to communicate differently to different stakeholders? Do you have to tailor more analytical, more data? How does it change?
Yeah, 100%. And it really is about reading the room. And I think that's the difficulty sometimes when we've had quite a changing organisation in the last few years. In one year, we had like 4 CMOs. So then when you're trying to adapt and adopt to different styles and things, that is quite tricky, because you're going down one road, hang on, you're going down another, hang on, you're going down another. So trying to use your networks, whichever ones are stable, or to sort of work out, okay, what's that person, what drives them, what sort of information do they need? I ask my boss, I ask my peers, I ask other people, and then hopefully get to the point quicker than something falling on deaf ears. It's all about how it lands.
And thinking about how you think about value of insight and influence, how do you go about measure? Do you measure it? Do you put a number on it, or is it more anecdotal or cultural?
I think putting a value on it is the ideal. I will be honest. Do we do that? No. We do in terms of, okay, a campaign's going to cost X, so let's invest, and I like to use that language rather than let's do some research. Let's invest to make sure that the decision to spend Y is the right one and we get a return on investment. Let's invest to understand about this proposition. In terms of quantifying it, I think we're failing at that, as I'm sure a fair number of other people also are. But as I say, for me, the value is if the CEO is using it, which he is, our CEO is using it at the minute, and that is amazing. I feel so proud when he comes out, every update, him and the leadership team, the senior leadership team, the executive committee are using the language of our customer needs, of our segmentation to communicate their messages. And for me, that's the value that we add when I can see it as a thread running through the organisation top to bottom, where not I'm saying 100% of the workforce is familiar with it, but the significant majority down to store level, familiar, understanding it's communicated, and that's where we see value.
Brilliant. And if there's one thing, something that you might have learnt through your time in those earlier jobs to now, but you wish you knew now, what would that be?
I think this is an excellent question, and I pondered on this. And I think for me, it's that everybody does come with urgent. And so when you're starting out, you think that's what I've got to do. The best things are the quick things and the urgent things. And what I come to realise in my slightly more mature state of mind now is that actually the best things are the things which have taken longer. The best things are those that were perhaps a bigger project, like a segmentation, where maybe it took a bit longer. We went round but now the difference it's landed for 4 years is amazing. Or trackers, it takes longer. Maybe you've got to wait for the data, but then the richness of it is so multi-dimensional and dynamic because you can look back at trends, you can add in different sources, you can add in different cuts versus a static one-off piece. It's worth it. So rather than always be thinking about and getting caught up, which is so easy to do, isn't it, in the now. And I think it's wider sort of our society actually that we can get caught up in the now. But it's the bigger term things. It's like saving up for your house versus your quick purchase of something. The more important things in life aren't the quick purchase because somebody will forget about that next month, whatever. What they won't forget about and what you don't forget about is your foundation, your house that you saved up, that you bought, that you've invested in. So making sure that as a team leader, I'm thinking about that in terms of resourcing and projects. And I'm not just fielding everybody onto the quick and urgent, but that we're allowing enough time, capacity and thought to go into those bigger investment decisions that will really be the ones that make the impact in the business in the long term.
Which I think is a brilliant example. We all, I think, in a day-to-day get tied up in that, the urgency and the quickness. Looking ahead, what are the trends that you see that either excite you or concern you?
There's a trend for me which both excites and concerns me. And for some, of course, it is a reality, but I think it's not for all of us, which is this integration of data and using AI and this integration of our databases with market research data with other third-party sources. Now, you hear and see plenty of agencies fielding, it's easy, this is happening. But for those of us, and I know from working, as I say, in a number of large corporates, when we've got legacy databases and huge different sources and complexities, it isn't actually as easy as one might think to have that all in. So that both excites me when we do get there, because I do see the benefits of it, to be able to overlay our data onto the hard data, to see the trend, see how it plays out. And where we have done it, it's great and it's really thorough. It also, I guess what sort of, as I say, scares me or concerns me slightly is that once you've got that and you democratize that, who has access to that? And what about, you do still get people who come in with a certain way of thinking and want to find the proof point to prove it. And, it's like lies, damn lies and statistics. There's always a data point to prove your proof point
Yes.
in there somewhere. So how can we control, maybe it's not the right word, manage for that?
Manage.
I don't know. And I think this is where I would hope to lean on our collective industry. And this is where I think we have a strength to share best practice here. I got a lot of, as I say, guidance from speaking to other people, other peers in other large corporates or small corporates, sharing best practice, how are they managing this? And I think sharing our best knowledge and working through this together, that's what makes it not scary and will be what makes it successful for us all.
I think that's a great point. What is, if there's something you would like to challenge us all on as an industry to be better, what would that challenge be?
I think we need to think about how we can demonstrate our expertise without making it sound too black box, but also showing that it is a real science and an art and a speciality, and that it isn't that everybody can just Google what is the answer. So how can we really show the talent that we have and the rigor that we have, and that things are so much deeper when you do a really great piece of research.
Which I think is really links back to your previous question really, really nicely, because if you can really demonstrate the rigor, then you actually help sort of guard against the risk that people just go and do it on their own.
And sometimes we do just need more simple, straightforward answers, and doing quick turnaround pieces works. But other times we don't. And we did a piece with some doctors of psychology, and it was really rich, the level that we got, versus say if we'd done, an online focus group. So sometimes you do have to go to that next level and uncover something you would have never got to before.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Finally, one last question. If there's one thing you think that our audience should take away from our conversation today, what do you think that one thing should be?
I think to be brave and have confidence, and to remind ourselves that we are here to nudge. We're often not the people holding the pen, making the decision, but we are a huge part, and we shouldn't underplay this, of those decisions happening in those businesses. And we should reflect on that. So do it in your quarterly, do it in your monthly, do it in your end of year, note those down, and the pride that you'll find in seeing what you've been nudging, what you've been working on, what you've been part of, what you've been shaping, who you've been helping. We're kind of helpful people, aren't we? And we want to be there to sort of really influence. And as I say, it's a bit like being a parent in a way. You can underplay it and think, oh, well, I've just done this and that. But really you're doing 100 things a day and, creating something, and then you see it grow in front of you. And so you should be proud of that. Brilliant.
I think that's a great point to end on. Thank you very much, Claire, for your time and for joining us today. And thank you to the audience too for tuning in. We may be out of time today, but we'll be back with another episode next month to hear some more inspiring stories about customer insights success. But for now and until then, I've been your host, Paul Hudson, and this has been the MRX Lab.